This panel discussion, Building Research Capacity at HBCUs with Federal Agencies, was hosted by the Thurgood Marshall College Fund. Representatives from the National Science Foundation and the National Institutes of Health focus on programs at their agencies that HBCUs can leverage to build their institution's research capacity. Principal investigators at Morehouse College and Tuskegee University share tips on what has contributed to their success in receiving NIH and NSF grants.
Our panelists for today, I'll introduce you. The person before us actually stole our clicker. We don't have a clicker, so when they do their presentations, they're going to come up and stand here at the podium. We want to keep the party going like us HBCUs know how to do. And Dr. James Moore, he is the Assistant Director of the Directorate of STEM Education at the National Science Foundation. Dr. Kenneth Gaucher, he is the Corentin I. Chenault Endowed Division Chair of the Experimental Learning and Interdisciplinary Studies and Director of the Cultural Relevant Computer Lab at Morehouse College. Next will be Dr. Marie Bernard. She is the Chief Officer of Scientific Workforce Diversity for the National Institutes of Health. And then Dr. Timothy Turner will close us out. He is the Associate VP for Research in the Center of Biomedical Research at Tuskegee University. So how we're going to go is each of them will come up and do some short slides to know what the things that they have and what they were talking about, and either going on at their division or going on at their university. And then I will ask some short questions, and then hopefully we'll have enough time to turn it over to the audience for any questions from you all. Sound like a plan? So first is Dr. Timothy Turner. I'm sorry, James Moore.
Good morning. Good morning. Well, it's a pleasure to be in your midst, and particularly around NSF. HBCUs held in high esteem in the National Science Foundation. You play a critical role in this juncture where we are in this country. As you recall, the Hudson Institute did a report in 1983 and it described prophetically what the new worker would comprise in the 21st century. And it said it would be women, ethnic minorities, and immigrants. September the 11th, it changed our different pathways for immigrants to come to this country, particularly around sensitive areas, national security, sensitive areas like cybersecurity. So therefore, we have to double down. It's not just an NSF economic imperative, but it's a national defense imperative that we invest in what we call emerging and developing institutions. And what we know, HBCUs, you possess a human capital that is unprecedented. And we know that talent exists everywhere, and you have a storied history of developing and cultivating that talent. So I won't be long-winded, as they say, give you a prelude like John Coltrane. I'm going to try to improvise here. As the assistant director, in October of last year, we changed our name, and many of you all may not realize this, that our new name is the Directorate for STEM Education. We were formerly the Directorate for Human Resources. And our name changed, and I had nothing to do with it. It was going downstream, but I was able to sign off on the paperwork. But nevertheless, this is just a snapshot of NSF and its impact. You know, there are over 50,000 graduate students who benefit from our proposals. And the recent legislation that some like to liken as the new Sputnik, the CHIPS and Science legislation. And minority serving institutions, HBCUs, rural education, all of these areas around workforce development, middle job skills, not just college education, graduate education. All those things are embedded in that legislation. And hopefully, if you haven't read that legislation, you see HBCUs in that legislation. But there's some few talking points that I'm going to say them consistently in my little short time here. There's a 100% chance we can't fund you if we don't what? If you don't submit a proposal. It's a 100% chance we can't fund you. And so let me just say this, we're very proud when we look in our directorate. The Directorate for STEM Education is a leader in the agency. And some of that is by default because many of the programs that are in statute that is very explicit and very specific to HBCUs or within our portfolio, like the HBCU Up, and we have a program lead in here. But I want you to know that though you see programs that say it may target HBCUs and minority serving institutions, that's just one of many places that you can tap into. And basically we see that as an opportunity to catalyze the kinds of things that you want to do in terms of moving to the new frontier of STEM. But we don't see that that is a permanent fixture for you. See, in our directorate, we see ourselves as a cross-cutting director. We like to see ourselves as the original cross-cutting director. And many of you all, within that legislation, you will hear about the newest director, and we hadn't created a new directorate in over 30 years. It's called TIP. And I won't just give you the acronym because if you're like me, I have to sit there and pause and think what those acronyms mean. Technology, innovation, and partnerships. In essence, one of the strategies, even though we're very thankful to the CHIPS and Science legislation that it gave us additional funds, but we like to think TIP enabled the agency to be able to get those funds. You know, more about our directorate, as we have three major thrusts, and we're not limited to this, but I would be remiss if I didn't highlight this. When you survey the federal landscape, the Directorate for STEM Education is the largest entity in the federal government that funds STEM education research. And the second is the U.S. Department of Education that we refer to as IES. So our core is educational research, and we, as an agency, spend over $1.3 billion in educational research. It's critical that we continue to invest in educational research because we're trying to advance teaching and learning, but more importantly, we want to help individuals to realize their dreams and aspirations. You know, broadening participation is a part of our ethos, it's who we are. If you blew up one of the divisions, you would basically wipe out the majority of broadening participation in the agency. So the HBCU programs that focus on HBCUs, Hispanic serving institutions, tribal colleges and universities, all of those entities are within our portfolio, and all of those programs are congressionally mandated programs. As you all know, when you look at the budget, we're very proud that we have the budget, but it's almost taking a 5-gallon bucket from the ocean and say you stole the ocean. Some of you all could use the full amount what we allocate to HBCUs for your one institution. Now, that's not just unique to your institutions. You know, our budget, we have the third largest budget in the agency, and we see a steady increase in the aggregate, but we see flatline in specific programs. So in many ways, when you think about NSF, and we have to really think about this in a way that is not, NSF was designed to catalyze, not to fund things until perpetuity. And so in many ways, we got it. So if you gave me another $1 billion, and I would take it, but it still wouldn't allow us to be able to solve some of the grand challenges of our time. Because money alone won't be able to do it, but collaboration, teaming, and partnering are the ways in which we are advocating to deal with and address some of the grand challenges of our time. As you all, another area is STEM professional workforce development. Workforce development is a critical component, and really some people only see the agency as just an R&D enterprise, but we were founded on workforce development. we talked about research when we were founded, and we are nearly 75 years ago, and we were founded during the time of Sputnik. Here we are when I talk about a full circle moment. But our first program, it was the Graduate Research Fellowship Program. And it will be, it's the program that produced more Nobel laureates than in any program, and arguably the oldest, the most prestigious fellowship program in the federal government. Our review process, two things, even though it's being constantly reviewed. If you want to talk to a program officer, there's two things that you need to factor in. We want a one-pager, and if you can frame it within this intellectual merit and broader impacts. We don't want a manifesto, we just want one pages that we can react to. And I must say that the program officers are very amenable to working with prospective investigators, and especially among HBCUs. I can't stress enough to you how significant, how important you are in terms of helping the nation become a leader. I can't say that enough, but I tell you, most people know I try to reach out as much as I can. I'm in the air longer than I'm actually in the place. But I want people to know that the rank and file, we see you and we hear you, and we're trying to respond accordingly because it's really important, particularly with the state of affairs right now.
Phenomenal Media Productions creates and distributes streaming content relevant to HBCUs and Black-owned businesses.